After graduating from college, I got a job at an electronics manufacturer, and now I'm a salesman handling big box stores and retailers that sell household appliances. Ouch! The pain's flaring up again. For the past few days, my bottom left molar had been swelling up. That day, after my second appointment, a sharp pain surged through that molar. It was an unusual pain for such a mere cavity. When I looked around, I noticed a signboard of a dental clinic. It was one of the chains, with 5 branches across Oregon. I needed to get this severe molar pain treated immediately, or I wouldn't be able to speak. Upon entering the dental clinic, a young, friendly female dentist named Jessica attended to me. She carefully examined my mouth and said, "Your wisdom tooth has developed a cavity." I visited her for about a month during my work breaks. That's how I met my wife, Jessica. Despite her limited experience, her cheerful nature and friendly smile made her a favorite dentist among children and their parents. 3 months after meeting Jessica, I proposed to her. Our relationship went smoothly, and we got married 2 years later. After a while into our marriage, Jessica's skills as a dentist improved, and she even began training new dentists and dental assistants. On the other hand, my sales performance was average, nothing exceptional. I haven't achieved any significant results, and I'm still an average salaried employee. Every day, I would sigh, comparing my vibrant and passionate wife to myself, an unremarkable salesman. One evening, while sipping coffee after dinner, a thought crossed my mind, which I verbalized. In the grand scheme of things at the company, I'm just another replaceable employee. There are many like me. Grasping my shoulder, Jessica responded with a serious look. "Bob, the company might think they can replace any employee, but for the clients, not just any salesperson will do. I understand this because of the drug reps that visit our clinic. It's the trust that makes them comfortable. For those clients, you are irreplaceable, Bob." Her words struck me like a hammer blow. It dawned on me what real value meant. That single statement from Jessica dramatically changed my perspective towards my job. As the saying goes, change the mindset, and the actions follow. My client relationships and contract numbers doubled in no time, and I clinched the top spot in sales performance. Later, I was promoted to a managerial position. It was my first raise in 8 years since joining the company. By that time, Jessica was managing one of the 7 branches of the dental clinic chain. Though we didn't have children, we respected each other's lifestyles, believing it was the ideal form for a couple. Then one day, during a lingering summer heat in September, Jessica's phone rang. It was from a hospital near her parents' home in Texas. Jessica's parents had been involved in a multi-car crash, and they were taken to the emergency room. By the time Jessica and I arrived, her father had sadly passed away. While her mother survived, she was left with a lasting injury in her leg. After her father's funeral and the memorial service, Jessica brought up something she wanted to discuss. "Bob, I'm considering taking over the family dental clinic back home." "What?" I exclaimed, taken aback. "And I want you to move with me." I had seen it coming. Her family's home was in Texas, a distance that required a flight from our current place in Oregon. Commuting was out of the question. "You want me to quit my job to be with you?" I asked, and Jessica replied with a slightly awkward look. "I'm sorry. I know you've just become a manager and things are going well at work, but since my dad passed away, I'm the only one who can take over the family's dental clinic, and being an only child, I have to look after my mom. Unlike a short-term out-of-town assignment, I'm left with only 2 choices: quit my job and move with Jessica, or maintain a long-distance relationship." "I get where you were coming from, Jessica, but I can't decide right now." "Okay. If I were to leave my current job, I haven't even started looking for a new job. I'm not sure if I'd even find one." Hearing that, Jessica said, "If you can't find a job you like, you can just help around the house. If you could take care of my mom during the day, it'd be a big relief. Since the clinic is private, if I work hard, I can support you and my mom." I was at a loss for words. She might be right. Even without my salary, she probably earns enough. But what about my past 8 years of hard work? "I'm sorry. I really need some time to think about it," I told Jessica and stepped outside. Becoming a stay-at-home husband. We've always shared household chores. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, I can handle them all. I'd probably manage caring for my mother-in-law too. But what would my mother-in-law think? Would she be uncomfortable with her son-in-law taking care of her day-to-day needs? That's a concern, and so is my job. I'm concerned about that, and about quitting my job where I've just been promoted. I pondered and came to a realization. I just can't do it. Depending solely on my wife's income isn't feasible for me. The next day, I spoke honestly to Jessica. She looked sad but said, "I get it. You can't just leave a job you've been dedicated to, but my decision is made. I want to continue the family dental clinic. I want to be with my mom." I understand. And the decision was made. We'd live apart for a while. Initially, I'd use my days off to fly and visit her in her hometown. But soon, our busy lives took over, and our regular visits became infrequent. Calls and emails dwindled over time. Before we knew it, a year had passed since we started living separately, and we began to question the purpose of our marriage. And then, our bond, which was once just on paper, ended. 20 years have passed since then. At 55, I was promoted to the head of sales. Just thinking about retiring in another 5 years. When my company, hit by a recession, started laying people off. For those with positions, there was a bonus for early retirement. Maybe I could enjoy a break and look for another job during that time. I decided to opt for early retirement. Since then, I've been passing on my responsibilities to my juniors, and soon, all I had left was to use up my paid leaves. One evening, I was dining at a diner and watching the news on TV. The news showed an area affected by a landslide due to a hurricane. This hurricane was particularly bad. Houses were destroyed everywhere. At that moment, a familiar scene flashed across the TV screen. Wait a minute, I recognize that place. Oh? That's the road I took when I visited Jessica's family home a few times. Watching the news for a while, I realized the situation was dire. The whole residential area where Jessica lived with her mother-in-law was buried under a landslide. What on earth? This is bad. I rushed out of the shop and tried calling Jessica, but couldn't get through. The next morning, I headed to her family home. The area where Jessica's family home and the dental clinic stood was unrecognizable, buried beneath the mud and debris. From the local police, I learned that around 10 people had already been rescued and sent to the hospital. However, there were still over 10 victims buried alive. It seemed impossible at the disaster site to confirm the names of those who had been rescued. Believing that Jessica was among those saved, I headed to the hospital. At the hospital reception, I inquired about Jessica and her mother-in-law's names. What? This? This is her mother's name, isn't it? This can't be. I found out that Jessica's mother didn't make it. Jessica had been moved to the ICU. Apparently, she had a head injury. I waited in the hospital's lounge for hours on end. As the night approached, her condition deteriorated. Soon after, Jessica was rushed into surgery. Even during college exams or job interviews, I never really prayed. But now, that's all I could do. God, please, save Jessica. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. The last time Jessica and I spoke was about a month ago. Even after our breakup, we kept in touch a few times a year, updating each other over calls and emails. Since neither of us had any hard feelings, it was easy to communicate. "Hello, it's me. Oh, you sound down. What's wrong?" "Well, we got some fresh graduates at work, and they just casually email us whenever they're late or absent. It's really frustrating." She would listen to my complaints. She would comfort me by saying, "Modern kids can be so thoughtless these days." Looking back, I thought about relocating near Jessica's house and searching for a new job after taking early retirement. After our divorce, I was too busy with work, didn't date anyone, and never really felt attracted to anyone. I heard the situation was the same for her. 4 hours later, the light outside the surgery room went off, and the surgeon came out. Jessica had suffered internal bleeding in her brain from the impact. A clot had formed, blocking one of her brain vessels. She was alive, but there would be permanent damage to her right side. It's impossible for a dentist to continue treating patients with such an impairment. She can't continue her dental practice. Thinking about how Jessica must have felt, it breaks my heart. The next morning, Jessica woke up, her eyes widening in surprise when she saw me. "Bob," she whispered in a frail voice. "Oh, I just saw it on the TV news and rushed over. Is your head hurting?" "It seems the anesthesia is still working, so it doesn't hurt that much," she replied in a feeble voice. Afterward, the two of us listened to the doctor in charge. That her mother passed away at the disaster site. Jessica will have lasting effects on her right side. Her right hand is paralyzed and won't move as it used to. It was said that she'd likely need a cane to walk due to the residual effects on her right leg. Lying in bed, Jessica silently shed tears. I couldn't find the words to comfort her and just kept gently stroking her back. In about a week, Jessica was able to communicate normally. "Bob, what about your job? Have you been off this whole time?" I explained to her about my early retirement and that I was using up my paid leave, so I didn't need to go back to work. Then, I asked her, "Jessica, what do you want to do when you're discharged?" "I'm actually torn," she replied. "First, I want to lay Mom to rest beside Dad, but after that, our house and dental clinic are both gone. I don't know what to do." She probably realized that returning to work as a dentist might be out of the question. I mustered my courage and told her, "With my current situation, if you want to stay in this town, I can move here and support you, but if you want to leave, you can come with me." Hearing that, Jessica slowly shook her head. "I can't. I don't want to be a burden to you." "You'd never be a burden. 20 years ago, I chose my job over you and let you return to your family's home alone. I've always wondered if that decision was a mistake." Hearing this, Jessica looked at me with wide eyes. After a moment of silence, she said, "Bob, when I'm discharged, can I come back with you?" She looked a bit sad, saying that her cherished hometown had now become a place of painful memories. "I understand. Let's go back together." Saying that, I gently patted Jessica's back. 2 months later, we're now working as live-in managers for an apartment complex. Every morning, while cleaning the entrance, we greet the residents. "Have a good day." "Will do." Jessica is currently practicing typing on a computer using her left hand. She wants to create notices to post on the apartment's bulletin board. I'm always amazed at her persistence, no matter the years gone by. I thought I'd be the one supporting her, but I find myself drawing inspiration from her more often than not. Since living with Jessica, I've taken up cooking as a hobby. I still need her taste tests and advice, but I aspire to surprise her with a delicious meal one day, experimenting with different dishes daily. It's amazing what you can accomplish at any age, in any situation. I firmly believe that, moving forward, we'll continue to support and grow with each other.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.